Hi everyone, this is Laura from Green & Company, and today I'm going through September's Creative Maker Box project. In your box you will have your back piece, front piece, your quote part, and then your stand. So to begin, we're going to start with staining. So we'll get this done. Now in your box you will have your stain, and we always use whole wheat stain. Now you'll notice this time it's a little bit lighter. We've diluted it with equal parts water because we don't want this part to be too dark. Normally a rattan kind of pattern is very light or in a natural state, but I didn't want to leave it in this color, so we just diluted it a little bit so that way it's not quite so dark. So you don't have very much there, but we're not staining all of this. We want to be careful in how much we saturate our brush because we don't want to flood these little holes, and then we will be doing the back, and we can do all of this. So you should have enough there. So let's get started. So give it a little squish and try and get rid of all that extra so that way it's not getting in all those little holes, and then just start wiping. And you can come in a little bit on this part, but we're going to overlap it with the front side part. So I'm not putting too much on my brush, and I'm putting the majority of it when I start. I'm doing it on that flat part so that way it doesn't pop through those holes. And then turn that brush on its side so you can control where you're wiping. Okay, and then we're going to just give that a wipe and wipe away anything that might be a little extra, and that'll help blend that. And then we can flip it over and do the same thing. And this time you can do that full piece in the back, so you can do that. Okay, and then I'm going to continue on here. I'm just going to wipe right away where it's already been stained. That way it doesn't get a dark lip where I am overlapping. Okay, and when you're done, if you have any extra stain and you have a pile of whole wheat stains, you know, from other projects, just pour it in there. That little bit of water is not going to affect the overall color of it if you have more. That way you don't waste it and you can use it for another project. So I'm just going to let that dry, and we'll move on to doing the white part. Okay. Now, if you want to, you could always stain this back piece, but I just left it. So that's totally up to you whether or not you want to do that. So I'll leave that up to your discretion. The next part we're going to do is the outer frame and the inner part to the sign. Now I'm going to leave this taped together, except I want to flip it over, just because then it'll help cover some of that edge when I'm wiping the paint on. So you do what is easier for you, but I like to have the edge cover, and it'll be able to support that little frame a lot easier instead of having to handle it. So I'm just going to do it like that. And then when I'm done, I'll pull this one right out because I'm going to paint it. So I'm just going to leave it taped in the front. So at the moment, I will just leave that like that, and I'm going to use a baby wipe just because I'll have a bit more control on painting that edge than I would have with a makeup sponge, because if I squish it, it will want to color that edge, and you can wipe it off with a baby wipe. So you do what works for you, but I'm going to do mine with the baby wipe. Put a little bit on, and I forgot to bring my little containers home, so I'm just going to use a tray, and I'm just going to start to wipe. So don't worry about getting it on this one because we're not using it anyways, and so that kind of helps when you're doing this, that you can lay some of that on here rather than on the inside. So, and yeah, it might take me a couple more times to get the outside painted than the inside, but this works for me. So and try and make those full long swipes so that way you won't have any stop and start marks. Mine's got a hole in the side here. I just grabbed a dent from the store when I did this one, so I'll probably just fill that in with some white with the little brush after. Okay, so I'm just going to let that one dry, and that's going to take no time at all. Now if I look at my edges, they're fairly clean, and if I look on the inside, these still have a little bit. So I'm just going to see, that side is fine. This one's got a little bit more, but then it's easy to wipe off a little bit than it is a lot. So there, and this one's got a little bit here. Okay, so I'm just going to set that part off to the side, and I'll still use this outer part after. And I could have taken it all apart at once, but I'll use the outer frame, or this inner frame, for that again. Okay. So we'll just set that here. Now this one, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a sand first. It's a little rough on my end. Okay, so we don't need to paint the back because that is going to stick to the front part of the back of the sign. So we're just really painting the front, and we want to avoid the sides. But I could do it with the baby white, but it's pretty flat. It is flat, and this will go a lot faster, and I can do less coats. So I'm just going to start. When you're doing your white coats, definitely make sure, or any coats really, but white tends to be the most notable. If I just kind of did those back and forth marks, then you would see those lines, but you definitely want to take it right across. That way it, when it dries, you won't see those at all. I'm just gonna wait because I am being pretty messy, but this one's easier to take care of. Okay. Laying it on and then just going right across, and then I'm just trying to blend what I did in the previous. Now as it dries, the paint will darken, so that's why it'll look different already, but don't worry, once it dries, you will look the same. And okay, so there, and then I'm just going to wipe off anything that I got on the sides. Just like that. Okay, so let that set and dry, which won't take very long. And I'm going to come back to this piece. And now I'm just going to, I like the space is really small today anyway, so just give that a sand. I'm being a little bit more vigorous on this first sanding because I really want to knock down that raised grain that is caused by doing that first coat of paint. So your second coat should lay on a lot nicer and should start soliding up the white. All right, so go back to your baby wipe. So we'll let that dry again, and we'll come back over here. Mine needs probably just a few more minutes to dry, so I'm just going to come back in just a few minutes and we'll continue on. Okay, so I'm back. So take your 400 grit sandpaper and give this a nice sand. You want to sand with the grain, so with the lines in the wood. And instead of going side to side like this, because a lot of people when they sand will curve, I will usually turn it so my lines are going up and down, and then I will sand that way. So that way it's easier to do it straight without noticing any sanding marks going like this. I mean, a smaller board, it's a little bit easier, but if you get into bigger projects, then that's a little bit of a tip there. Okay, and then wipe that clean, and then I'm going to go back to my paint. Sometimes when you're wiping the white colors, and just from the char of the wood, you can get like a little bit of brown on your wood. It doesn't bother me at all. It kind of looks a little distressed, but you can come in there and kind of just gently lighten it if it looks too dark for you. So I'm just gonna leave this one, and I guess depending on how much paint you have left, how heavy you put your coats, you might need to do, you might have enough to do another coat, or you'll just leave it. So I'm probably just gonna leave it with 2, but I'm gonna come back and do another one on my frame, because painting it on and wiping it on are definitely not the same heaviness in your paint application. So this one is dark enough. This one needs one more. So you will need to keep that piece when we put this together. So don't throw it away. And I also like to use them for when I'm storing my pieces because it'll help protect the design. Okay, so that's the inside, the outside. I am okay with it. Okay, so I'm going to set that up to the side. And I'm just gonna check on my my board. So the stain is still just a little bit cool, so it still has a little bit more to dry. But as it is drying, you can see that it's starting to lighten up. So that's good there. Okay, so next you're going to grab this piece here. And you're gonna need to put some tape on the back. So if you've got some painter's tape, take that and tape across so we can take that tape off the front. Okay, and then you can flip this over and gently remove that tape. I would reuse it again, but when you peel it off of the wood in the front, it loses some of its tackiness, and then it doesn't want to stick to the adhesive backing on the other side. So okay. Now, so we're gonna do, so I'm just matching the colors we use for in the pumpkin, so that way when you go to use this, you can coordinate with that. If you choose to want to completely do something different, that is up to you. If I wasn't matching pumpkins, I'd probably do something more stain and gray and whatever, but that's because I wanted it to go with the fall pumpkins. So that's what's going on there. So take your foam wedge and we'll use it in its full state for the lettering, and then when we get to the little decorative leaves there, can chop it up there. So take your green, which is khaki. If you have some trays like this or paper plates, it always is nice just to be able to pour out a little bit, or you can dip right into the container and then blot off on your paper towel. So don't need much, but if I was to go dip it and go straight to there, then all of that paint's going to go down the sides of the lettering. So you need to blot off most of it so it's almost dry, as you can see, and then just lightly pounce on your design, because you don't want to squish it too much that it goes down those sides. Sometimes it takes a little to prime this. There we go. And your first coat should be nice and thin. We're just getting those letters or that wood primed with a little bit of paint, and that second coat should solid it right up. If you feel like you need to tape this off, you know, cover that up, that's totally fine. Sometimes when you're blotting off, if you get too much paint left on your paper towel, you can use that up so you're not wasting your paint. If you dip too heavy here. Okay, so we're just gonna let that dry because we're doing nice light layers. This won't take a whole lot of time. And so we'll just leave that for a second, and I'm just gonna come back to this. So if you bring this back in, make sure you don't have any wet paint on there. So when you're flipping this over, you don't ruin the front of your sign. So I'm just gonna start sanding now. You want to be just very delicate. This is a little bit more of a delicate cutout. So we're just sanding to help smooth out the grain that's raised when you apply a stain or a water-based product. So just use your hand and feel it, and it should be fine. Hopefully you're pretty even in your application so you don't get any blotches from handling it with your gloves or anything like that. And that looks pretty good. And then on the other side, you can come in and do the same thing. Okay, so that is sanded and it can sit off to the side. I'm gonna come back here, and this is dry already because my layers are very light, so I'm just gonna sand this. Now for some reason you have to walk away from this for a while. What I would suggest is popping these out, because if you are too heavy in your paint application, you could get these stuck in there. So you want to be able to make sure that you can gently get the movement in their spots. That way you know you didn't lock them in there with some paint and they're going to come out freely. Okay, so that's good there. And we can go back and do our second coat. So if you have extra sponges, you could go ahead and do the yellow at the same time you're doing the green, but I'm just gonna do it with the one. So yeah, I can still see just slight lighter patches, so I am gonna do 3 when I'm done. So I'm just gonna let that one sit there for a second, and I will come back in a few minutes. Actually, you know what? No, let's see. This is dry, so I'm actually gonna sand this and get it ready to go for that. Okay, so that's nice and sanded, so I'm going to leave that dry for just another minute or so, and then I will come back and we'll continue on. Okay, so that was just a couple minutes, so I'm just doing the same thing, giving that a light sand. And making sure I've got some movement in my letters, so I just gently just push on them, making sure they don't feel like they're getting stuck in there, and then I'm just going to come back with a little bit more. Okay, so that looks good. So I'm just going to leave that, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to cut this off. So when you're doing your paint, you really should not be dipping so much that your sides of your foam wedge are just saturated in paint. You really should just be hitting that main surface. Otherwise you're just dipping too far in. Now you can come in and cut it off. Throw that in the garbage. Now this is way too big of a surface area for what I need here, so I'm actually going to cut this in half. So that way I've got another piece for another time. And I'm just going to plop a little yellow in here. And I'm going to come back and do the exact same thing. So I'm just going to speed through this process for the 2 or 3 times I have to do this, and then I will come back when they are ready to assemble. Okay guys, that's the last coat, so I'm just going to let that dry one more time, come back, sand it all, and then we will get into putting it all together. Okay, see you soon. Okay, I'm back, so I'm just going to give this a quick sand. And then I'm going to make sure my area is clean, because I'm going to take this and flip it over and pop these out. Just careful. So if any of the insides of the letters come out, that's great. We don't need them anymore anyway, so they can just go in the garbage. Just make sure you don't take a piece that you still need. And if your pieces are coming out right away, then that's a good indication that you didn't overload on paint. So before you throw your stuff in the garbage, just make sure pieces that you need are in there. So just take that, lift that up, flip that over, and then I'm just going to come in here and pull all of these out. So this is what I would do if you couldn't get to assembling this right away. If you take it out and let them sit there, you know that when you can have time to come back and assemble it, you know that all of your pieces are going to come out of your template. I wouldn't let it sit overnight at all, just in case. But it's a fairly quick project, so you shouldn't. You should be able to get it all done at once. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring this over, and so you should have your sanded fronts. You should have your sanded piece there. You're going to need this piece. Now this piece is just a guide to help assemble this. So we're not going to peel off the adhesive on the back. So first of all, you want to make sure that your grain is going side to side. So the lines in the wood are going side to side. Make sure that your frame is also going that same direction. So just look there. And then you want to make sure your front sign is also going in that same direction as well. That way when it's all done, it's not looking like some are going one way, some are going the other. And then we're just going to plop this in here because this will help with our spacing. All right, so we're going to begin by doing the frame. So you're going to flip this over and you're going to gently peel off the backing here, which will reveal the adhesive. So you want to be very careful not to put your fingers right on it because you can peel it off. So just handle it by the side. If for some reason it wants to lift when you peel this, then just rub this back or pull this back and then just give it a rub. So that way it makes a little bit more contact with the wood. And then we're just going to gently peel this off all the way around. There we go. That's garbage. Okay, so make sure once again you line this up with your wood grain going side to side and just gently lay it around your template. Now don't squish it in yet because you might not be lined up. So as long as it's hovering over the wood, it won't stick in place right away. So right now just go in there and feel all the way around the side. Make sure that it feels like nothing is sticking past the sides. That side's good. And don't be afraid to even look at it just to make sure. Because if this one is off, then it'll make this one off, which then, depending on, yeah, how well you stain, you might see some of that edge. So, all right, so yeah, that feels good to me. I'm going to now push down so this makes contact with the right side. So also make sure that you're grabbing the side where the stain is down on the back, because that is the back side. Okay, and now come in here and plop this out. Okay, so now same thing, except this one is a little bit easier. So just same thing, you're gonna peel the back off. Just watch where you put your fingers. This one wants to come up a little bit more. I'm just going to move this out of the way for a second. So, sometimes the bigger the area, so even if you come at it off the side rather than straight with the grain, you'll find that it will pull off a little easier. There you go. Okay, throw that in the garbage, bring this back. Once again, make sure you're bringing it so your lines on your wood are going side to side. Same with the front piece, and if it's easier for you to tell from the back once you peel it off, then you can do that as well. Now you're just going to set it in there. And because you lined up your frame, that should be perfectly where you need it to be. And then you're just gonna squish that into place. Okay. And then you can peel that off. Okay, so the next thing you're gonna do, so making sure that this part is clean, like if you got any paint on here and you've done this right away, just make sure there's nothing that would have seeped through, that when you put this on there, it's going to leave those marks. All right, so do your best to just position this so it's lined up on all sides there, and then you can begin to assemble. Now I like to do a couple pieces opposite each other so I know that it's not going to shift as I do this. So I'm going to do my top and my bottom piece, and then I can focus on the lettering. So just be very careful when you're handling these. They are wood, but they can tend to break if you are a little bit rough with them. So I'm just pulling, I'm not just going and pulling it right down because you could snap that. So I'm just gently starting on one side, and then I'm holding it, supporting it as I pull that tape. Now, because these leaves are flowing that way, it really should be just easy to do these ones quicker than it was going against there. Okay, so these are the top ones. So just make sure this hasn't moved on you, and you can just set it in there. Oopsie, I flipped it upside down. So there we go. Okay. If you get it the right way, it should just fit. So I'm just making sure that I haven't made contact yet, pushed on it, and I'm making sure this board hasn't slid around. And once I know it's good, then I'm going to lock that one into place. I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom. Okay, and then delicately, carefully, there we go. Okay, same thing, just watch, because one side you look the same, but yeah, just gotta flip it around. Now just to make sure that this hasn't shifted just a little bit, make sure check your sides, and if it's good to go, give it a push. Okay, so you can take that off at any time, and you can see. Now, sometimes with these scripted letters, some people feel like they need the support of this to be able to take the adhesive off that. So I'm just going to show you a little trick, and then you can decide whether or not you're going to use it. So flip it over. I'm going to use a long one. So I'm going to use this one here. And I'm going to stick it in here. Oops. And if you had like an X-Acto knife or something with a sharp edge, or I use this for picking vinyl, I'm just gonna hold, I'm able to hold and support the word while I pick off the back. And you still don't want to let your fingers touch the adhesive. So if you need to hold it down, I use the tip of my my knife here, and because it doesn't really stick on there because I'm just using the tip. And that way I can support this while I gently pull on this, and you're less likely to break your piece. And because if your finger gets stuck, you can, you could snap it as well. So that way you've got the support coming from the sides. It's easier to not have to hold it. And you can gently pick that off. I think I got a little piece left. There we go. Okay, and so once that's off, you can take this, move that there, bring this back, set that on, and you can go in here, set it in there, and put it in place. Okay, so that's an option for you if you feel like you need that. I mean, some of the smaller ones, you're just as easy to, pick off like that, so that's not a problem. And then you can place in there. Now, if you feel comfortable enough, you can just like I did with this one, hold close to where you're pulling the adhesive off and really support it, so that way you're not yanking on it and it break. Handle the sides, not the top where it's sticky. And so you can do it that way too. So whatever you feel you're comfortable with. And then you're just going to set them in there like that. Okay. Yeah, that was of this one. Know which way. Let's go funny. There we go. So with these pieces, I mean, it's nice for putting your pieces on so you know exactly where they're going to go. But I also, when I'm storing my pieces, I don't throw these away, because if you were to pack this away, there is the good chance that you could, break one of these delicate letters. So if you have this piece over top, when you wrap it and put it away, they are protected. So that's why I like to keep all of those pieces when I'm done. I mean, sometimes depending on the piece, you're not able to layer it back over, but on some of these, most of them you can. And then you can pull that off. So there, everything's lined up. That part is all ready to go. So now we're gonna assemble the stand for the back. So to protect this when I flip it over, I am going to stick this back on, and I'm gently gonna flip it over so that way they're supported and not just being laid on. All right, so we're gonna add on our new stands. This one you will need some glue for, because there's no way to do this with all adhesive. So we will be adding these to our website because they do come in different sizes if you wish to add them on to other projects. So first of all, you're gonna need to find center. So I can't remember where it is. So, okay, so there's my center. So you want this to be lined up as best you can, and then have it placed so it's straight at the bottom, okay? This piece, you're going to slide underneath, and you want to center those slots with these tabs that stick out. So just do your best to eyeball them. Okay. There we go. Now just double check your bottom. Now, oops, I need a pencil. Apparently my pencil has gone missing, so I'm just going to use a pen. It's not a big deal. You're not going to see it too much. So just kind of make yourself a little mark. And then make sure you mark the top underneath here so you know where to put it. So pull that away, make sure that mark is there. Okay, good enough. So now you are going to need some glue. So you could use wood glue, just be careful not to put too much on. I'm just going to use my Gorilla Glue. All right, so I'm going to pull this off because now I can see my marks there, and I'm just going to add a little bit of glue. Whoa, okay, whoops, way too much. Way too much. Just going to blot some of that off because that's too much. Okay, now I got to find my marks and set that into place. Okay, and just gonna, I'm not gonna make full contact with it yet. I just want to make sure that it's still good to go. I didn't mess anything up. Yeah, we're good there. Okay, so I'm just gonna give it a press. Just be careful when you're pressing. I mean, you've got those pieces underneath, but just enough to it makes contact. So this stuff doesn't take that long to dry. So I'm just going to give that a moment. Now, once that is on, these pieces here are what are going to go in here. They should fit fairly tight, but we are going to glue them into place. So we will be putting one on here, fastening. Well, we could actually don't need that piece yet. We can put this one in here and then we'll attach the next part. Okay, so, okay, mine is dry. So I just plop a little bit of glue down that slot. Whoa, there we go. Has a mind of its own today. Okay, so I'm just gonna slide that extra glue in and I'm just gonna give it a press. You're gonna put the flat side down and you're really gonna wedge that in there. Okay, mine's got all this extra glue. Whoops, now we're adding some white on there. Okay, not the best one. Okay. Well, no one's gonna see it anyways on mine, so. Okay, so make sure they stand up straight. Wipe any extra glue off. And make sure, yeah, it looks pretty flat. Okay, there we go. Make sure your hands are clean. Okay, so this part goes in here because there's no glue attached to it. You really want it to be able to move on its own. Now this piece, we will attach to this one because if you put it in there first and then try and get this in there, it's never going to happen. So we're going to make sure you put a little bit of glue in that hole. Just a little bit of glue. There we go. Okay. So now you're going to place it on there, stick it in here, and then line it up over that slot and give it a push. And then, whoops, of course I pulled that off, so now I gotta put that back on. And flip it back over. Okay. There we go. Okay, so, and then just give that just a few minutes or a couple minutes to dry. So now when you stand it up, you won't have that easel stand. We're going to set this up and it can support itself there, just like that. Let's see if we can get you a backside shot there. There you go. You see that? So yeah, now it's all, and you can fold it away and it will stay there. Whoops. Okay, so I'm just gonna, this one just needs a little bit more press on my front here. There we go. Okay, so yeah, there you go, all done. I hope you enjoyed that project. It looks really good with your pumpkins situated on both sides. That's how we have it at the store. And yeah, so remember, keep these pieces so that way you can protect that lettering and you can protect the caning part on the sides here when you go to store it away. Oops, that one seems to be backwards. There we go. So yeah, that's what you can do. And but for now, hopefully you can enjoy that in your space. And thanks again, guys, for being a part of this month, and we'll see you next month. Thanks, guys. Bye.